the unseen consequences. You don't notice the cage until the lock clicks. It starts innocently, a vague unease during Sunday night scrolls, a phantom fatigue that coffee can't kill, a numbness that lingers like fog after what should have been a joyful moment. But this is how the trap works, slowly. While you're distracted by deadlines and dopamine hits, your depression isn't just reshaping you, it's rewriting reality itself. Here's the silent catastrophe. Your despair has become the engine of a system that profits from your fragmentation. The personal apocalypse. Every day you numb the void, a part of you calcifies. Neurons that once fired in wonder at sunsets now only spark for notifications. Synapses that could have wired you for creativity instead harden into loops of rumination. This isn't metaphor, it's neuroplasticity. Your brain, desperate to conserve energy in a world of overwhelm, begins pruning what it deems non-essential. First to go, depth. The capacity to sit with ambiguity, to wrestle with existential questions, to feel anything beyond anxiety's shrill pitch. You become a ghost in your own life. Conversations turn transactional. Art feels flat. Sex becomes performance. Even your dreams shrink, not nightmares, but bland reruns of spreadsheets and subway rides. Schopenhauer saw this coming. Man can do what he wills, but he cannot will what he wills. You're free to choose, but your choices have been pre-filtered by a culture that pathologizes depth as overthinking and rewards dissociation as resilience. The societal spiral now zoom out. When millions of people are systematically alienated from their souls, you don't get a mental health crisis, you get cultural psychosis. Conspiracy theories flourish, not because people are stupid, but because the hunger for meaning becomes so desperate it swallows lies whole. Political polarization explodes not from ideology, but from the need to feel something, even if it's hatred. The rise of extremism, the addiction to outrage, the cults of gurus and influencers, all are symptoms of what Jung called the collective shadow. A civilization's repressed trauma bubbling up as collective madness. But the most insidious consequence, the normalization of the unreal. You swipe through dating apps, crafting personas while craving touch. You applaud hustle culture as it cannibalizes your youth. You call staring at screens for 12 hours a day connection. Huxley's prophecy has materialized. We've come to love our oppression, to adore the technologies that undo our capacity to think. The neurological betrayal. Your biology has been hijacked. Every TikTok scroll, every sugar rush, every hit of validation from a like triggers microsurges of dopamine, the same neurotransmitter implicated in addiction. But depression isn't just a chemical imbalance. It's what happens when your brain adapts to a world of hyperstimulation by downregulating sensitivity to joy. You need louder, faster, more extreme inputs to feel alive. The result? A generation chasing adrenaline through extreme sports, psychedelic trips, and viral fame, while their capacity for ordinary contentment withers. Even your memory is complicit. Studies show depressed individuals recall negative experiences more vividly, an evolutionary adaptation meant to force problem-solving. But in a media landscape, weaponizing fear and outrage, this bias becomes a self-reinforcing hell. You scroll past 9 good news stories, but the 10th, a child's death, a looming apocalypse, sears into your psyche. Your brain, wired to prioritize threat, concludes, the world is evil. I am helpless. Nothing matters. The myth of functionality. But I'm still productive, you insist. Of course you are. Capitalism doesn't need you well. it needs you functional. You can be clinically depressed and still excel at your job, raise children, and maintain a facade of normalcy. This is the great lie of high-functioning depression. Like a termite-riddled house, everything appears intact until the floor collapses. The philosopher Byung-Chul Han calls this the burnout society, one where we exploit ourselves voluntarily, mistaking self-destruction for virtue. Your productivity isn't proof you're okay. It's evidence of how deeply the sickness has penetrated. Ancient slaves wore chains. You wear Apple Watches that buzz with reminders to breathe between meetings. The generational inheritance, now consider the children. A toddler sees parents numb themselves with wine and Netflix after work. A teenager learns to pathologize existential growing pains as anxiety disorders. Universities churn out graduates skilled in algorithms but illiterate in inner life. Jung warned, nothing has a stronger influence on children than the unlived life of the parent. What are we passing down? A legacy of dissociation, a template for using achievement as anesthesia. A world where the first response to discomfort isn't curiosity, but a pill. The spiritual bankruptcy. Organized religion's decline left a vacuum. In its place, a patchwork of wellness cults, political dogmas, and Silicon Valley transhumanism. You meditate not to awaken, but to optimize. You manifest not for enlightenment, but for luxury. Even the climate crisis becomes another reason to dissociate. The world's ending, why bother? This is depression metastasizing as civilizational nihilism. But here's the twist. Your despair is the shadow of a repressed spiritual instinct. The part of you that yearns for ritual, for initiation, for communion with something larger. It hasn't died. It's been displaced. You see it in the secular zeal of fandoms, the quasi-religious fervor of fitness culture, the way people approach concerts like sacraments. These are unconscious attempts to fill the God-shaped hole. But when the sacred is commodified, the hole only deepens. The point of no return. We're approaching critical mass. The CDC reports rising rates of deaths of despair, suicides, overdoses, alcoholic cirrhosis, not in the marginalized, but among the educated and affluent. Japan's hikikomori withdraw into rooms for decades. China's Tongping, lying flat, movement rejects ambition entirely. In the West, quiet quitting and bare minimum Mondays trend as covert rebellions. These aren't individual failures. They're the canaries in modernity's coal mine, proof that the human spirit cannot indefinitely survive the demands of late capitalism. Yet, beneath this bleak horizon pulses a forbidden truth. The system needs your depression more than you fear it. Your despair keeps you docile. Your numbness makes you predictable. Your existential fatigue ensures you'll never muster the energy to revolt. This is why every institution, from Big Pharma to Silicon Valley, profits from managing your symptoms while ignoring their cause. Cure you, and the entire house of cards collapses. But there's a flaw in their design. The same forces that created this crisis contain the seeds of its undoing. Your depression, that relentless truth-teller, is already stirring something ancient within you. A memory of wholeness. A whisper that says, you were not meant for this. The trap has been set. The walls are closing in. But in the next section, you'll discover something revolutionary. Your darkest hour isn't the end. It's the crack where the light gets in.